Hello and welcome to coverage of of Grand Prix. I was going to say Portland for a minute because I saw that jersey, but we're in Vancouver, still the Pacific Northwest. We've got Evan Powers sporting his Trailblazers Damian Lillard jersey on the right versus a Californian, Paul Cheon. Both players sitting at 9-2, so in a somewhat precarious spot here in still the early to mid stages now of the second day of the tournament here. Picking up that third loss could be death as far as top 8 is concerned, and both players effectively fighting for their tournament lives here.
Yeah, both happy to be still in contention. It's getting pretty late into the tournament, but certainly this is when the nerves really kick in. So
exactly.
Although I don't know if you know, Damian Lillard's reputation is
he's clutch.
He's an end of game clutch guy. So we'll see if Evan has the clutchiness of his shirt's namesake.
And here's a thought scour for Paul Chion.
We see a pretty classic Affinity start here from Evan, spilling a bunch of cards that look like they do nothing on the table. A lot of zero power, a lot of, what is this artifact doing
Memory jar sitting there.
Welding jar, yep.
Welding jar. Memory jar would be a little better.
Just some jars.
Yeah.
But there's a Mox over there. Seems like a powerful card.
That's not a bad Magic card.
He does have the ability to attack for 2 infect and 2 damage this turn. Of course, looking at Paul's ability he's got a Cryptic Command in his hand, a Lightning Bolt, so that could come in handy. Of course, the Welding Jar great against the Lightning Bolt too.
So Inkmoth Nexus gets activated by Evan Powers, who's lining up his attack step here, but before that happens, Lightning Bolt Signal Pest from Paul Cheon. Pretty nice one here. It's going to reduce this attack down to just 1 infect.
Yep, and the regeneration doesn't actually happen here. He chooses not to use Welding Jar on the Signal Pest. Must have something better he wants to protect in his hand.
The Signal Pest wouldn't attack this turn anyway in that scenario,
right.
But that is his only offensive, well, not his only, but that's his best offensive threat at the moment, as this Inkmoth Nexus needs a lot of help in this deck to actually get the 10 poison in. It can happen pretty quickly if we see a Cranial Plating or Arcbound Ravager, but we don't see any of those right now. Just a Springleaf Drum here for Evan and passes a turn, so we're 100 feet away from the feature match area, but I'm pretty sure I heard Paul sigh.
Yeah.
A sigh of relief when it was just...
You just see Paul's hand over there.
What does he have?
He has a Splinter Twin and a Deceiver Exarch.
Oh my goodness.
He does not have another red mana. Looks like he might have an island, and he does have Cryptic Command. So he's looking pretty good here. Evan, though, showing us in his hand 2 Cranial Platings and a Galvanic Blast, which is going to be big enough to kill a Splinter Twin.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
This is going to get really interesting for Evan. He wants to get the attacks going here. He does have to be careful though, because if he uses the mana from his Inkmoth to equip up his Ornithopter and then attacks, he will not have mana available unless he has a free creature of some sort.
Right, which he doesn't. He chooses to pass.
So he's just going to pass. He knows that he could just be dead here.
Right.
So now what about for Paul Cheon?
Well, this is a bit of a giveaway that Evan has something, right? He didn't choose to equip an attack, so...
can Cheon just not play out one of his threats here?
Well, he might as well use the mana, right? He's not going to get to 7 mana and play Deceiver Exarch and then counter the Galvanic Blast. So, and here we see the Exarch enter play and probably targeting the Springleaf Drum, and Evan will kill it with Galvanic Blast.
But I mean, it gets interesting if he just doesn't do anything there, because Evan's just not really advancing his board state in that scenario.
Right, but next turn he won't have to cast a Cranial Plating, so he could use his mana to start to, he has the Mox Opal over there, so he can just cast Galvanic Blast off that and start to attack. And so, see Paul play that 4th land. Doesn't show the 2nd red. Looks like he has a Flame Slash in his hand.
All right, and there's an extra source of mana with an Ornithopter in conjunction with Springleaf Drum there.
Yep. So I think...
And that's going to resolve. Paul still holding on to that Cryptic Command.
Probably, it can be used a lot of ways defensively against an Affinity deck. you get to see sort of all of its modes against Affinity. It might counter an Etch Champion. We saw this last round. It might bounce a creature after it gets some counters on it. It might bounce the creature or the cranial plating when there's a cranial plating equipped.
Thanks, Nick.
Okay, he's going to end his main phase. This is before combat, though. So Paul, this is an interesting little dance that the players will do here. Is that so they're explaining when exactly these things happen. So the way this goes is you end your main phase, then there's a beginning of combat step. That's where Paul could use a card like Cryptic Command, right, to tap down the team. He could also flash in one of his creatures to tap something down. Then his opponent, if they get through that step, is now in Declare Attacker's step. And the interesting dance that the players will play here is when one of them has a land that can become a creature, if Paul decides to say, I'm going to tap your team, he can let that happen in the beginning of combat step. If Evan can say, sure, all my creatures are tapped. And then he can activate his Inkmoth Nexus and still get in an attack with it. And so it makes the situation awkward for Paul, because if he wants to make sure he takes nothing, he actually has to bounce the Nexus and tap the team.
Right.
Sitting at 20 and only 1 poison, I don't think that he's in that spot yet. But Paul is right now explaining, no, we were already past that stage. He had already activated the Nexus, and then he went to go to attacks. And I said, no, hold on, I might have something before you declare attacks here, but the Nexus is active.
Right.
That's the key difference here between what's happening. And I'm pretty sure that's what Paul's explaining to the judge right now, that the Nexus should be in active mode. It looks like they may have rewound a little here, though, as Evan has put the Nexus back down with his mana sources.
Now he is activating. Also, interestingly, there is enough black mana here to use Cranial Plating's instant speed equip effect. So, that situation where Evan can get 1 creature activated, it might be doing a lot of damage.
It looks like the Inkmoth was active because he used it with his Springleaf Drum to make black mana.
Yep.
Okay, so now that's going to equip that, and this plays around Paul doing any type of tap your thing down and shenanigans, because he got his Ornithopter attacking. It's already attacking,
right, before
and
he
then he equipped.
Yeah.
So this is a nice little sequence here. This is some of the viewers at home will be like, oh, I don't want to think about this.
Yeah.
But a lot of people, love the minutia, the little details here, and this is the difference, when you're playing, how much Modern you've played versus understanding how these sequences go and not. And Evan clearly has played his deck enough to know that he wants to get that plating on after, and Paul has played enough to know, of course, about tapping down the team. And as a result, Paul's going to take a pretty big hit here. He takes 8.
He takes 8 from the Cranial Plating to Ornithopter, and he has a Cryptic Command, a Splinter Twin, and a Flame Slash in his hand. Kind of an awkward situation.
He wants to try to dig for that red mana. He needs to find...
And he'll do an end step Inkmoth Nexus bounce. So that's the scariest creature because it can one-shot him.
Yeah, he did find the second red mana. It doesn't, of course, have the creature at the moment to combo off with.
And it looks like he may be planning to play that Flame Slash to knock out one of the Ornithopters. Of course, there's a Welding Jar out there. That does, though, take the artifact count down, and that helps him
either way
against the plating.
Yeah, I mean, on this board, the Ornithopter and the Welding Jar are very similar things. You sure it's not a memory jar? That's not... I can't
If it was a memory jar,
a lot more fun.
This game would be way more exciting. So,
all right, so here's Serum Visions.
Yeah, he did a couple good draw phases there off of his Cryptic Command and then his turn.
He also had a nice one off the Visions and found a Snapcaster Mage.
Yep.
So that can further basically lengthen the duration of this game. He can use his Flame Slash to mitigate a couple of artifacts. He will be able to Snapcaster, Flashback, Cryptic Command, again to keep Evan at bay while Paul buys enough time to find... Here's Flame Slash on Ornithopter to find his copy of either Deceiver Exarch or Pestermite, and then he can go off.
Right. Now, this is interesting here. Evan has the Welding Jar, and he's going to use it to regenerate his Ornithopter. Now, because he has enough, he can play that Inkmoth Nexus, activate it, then tap it and the Springleaf Drum and the Mox to produce 2 black mana and move the Cranial Plating. So it looks like... Oh, and that's going to make it even easier with the Meta Knight. It looks like he's going to be able to get in a hit with one of these Ornithopters, despite the fact that Paul has the Lightning Bolt. Which is going to drop Paul down to
3-ish, 2-ish?
Very, very low.
Very low.
Ooh, wow.
Second copy of plating. Now, what's his mana situation? He does have enough to instant speed equip or just regular equip one,
Right.
but he can only do it once. So is he just going to diversify his threats, put them on both?
Yeah, it's just equivalent then if he just puts them on both.
I mean, it does force Paul to have something, which he does. If Paul had nothing here, it would just be lethal.
Well, it's a lot of damage anyway. There are 5 artifacts up there, and then 6, 7, 8, and he can activate a Nexus for 9. So it's going to
Now,
drop
he
Paul to
can't
2.
activate and move it, though, right?
Well, right. So if he had equipped before combat, it would have only cost him 1. Instead,
Yeah.
it looks like he has to do it at instant speed, so it's going to be 1 less damage.
So this is actually kind of interesting now. It does look like Paul, though, his choice is just to kill the Ornithopter with the plating on it.
Yep.
And now Evan is not able to activate his Nexus, but he can just throw the plating on the other Ornithopter.
Right. He can use the Mox and the Memnite and the Springleaf Drum to, you see him equip the plating.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So
All team at 4.
He's down to 4.
That's Galvanic Blast range. So Evan empty-handed, but he's got 2 creatures plus a Nexus, all of which look pretty lethal with that plating. Hey, what was on the Snapcaster?
Now, some of these lists, some of these affinity lists I've seen have ran. Well, I've seen 1, 3, and 4 Galvanic Blasts from different lists. So it's a tough guess from Cheon's side. We can look at Evan's. He is on 1 Galvanic Blast.
So there will be no Galvanic
Blast,
Blast.
which is gone.
Yep.
But Paul, of course, is not privy to that data here.
Right, and he saw 1, so the instinct is to think there might be more. Now, Paul has drawn another Snapcaster Mage, and he has enough to Snapcaster and then play Cryptic Command here, which it looks like is probably the play he's going to make.
Sketchy stuff, though, with the Ink Moth. He'd much prefer to tap the team and draw a card, but again, that Ink Moth is going to make that not possible here.
Well, he can do it because there's only 8 artifacts. So 8 plus the Inkmoth Nexus's power
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? With the Ink
9.
Moth.
Oh, he already has 1 Infect, so yeah, he does have to worry
Yes,
about
because
it.
he got pinged for 1 earlier. So 9 is just enough. Though, if he's drawn an Etch Champion or something here, and he taps out for it, this could be pretty good for Chion, actually. He can counter it and tap the team. Yeah, he did. So if he Snapcasters, flashes it back, he goes to 3, and he can counter this champion and just tap the team here, right?
He can. It doesn't get him closer to winning. He still has another turn
He
where
gets a draw step.
He gets 2 draws, right? He gets
Yeah.
the Cryptic.
Well,
if he wants to just
Counter tap.
right.
So no draw step there, but he gets his natural draw step.
Right, but he can also just let the Etch Champion resolve
He could.
if he's looking at a situation where he needs to hit another Cryptic Command.
Totally. And now that Ink Moth Nexus is tapped, that means that Paul can use tap your team draw card
Right.
and try to dig.
Still,
It's getting very tight here, though, for Chion.
it's hard to imagine how he beats an Etch Champion. He can't play, he certainly can't draw into twin this turn and play
Right.
it.
Right.
Or draw a creature to twin up. So
So the creature has to not have summoning sickness for it to work, so that doesn't work
he's
out.
probably forced to counter the Etch Champion.
I mean, another Cryptic Command does work against Etch Champion,
Doesn't get him any closer to winning, though.
but it doesn't get him closer to. Well, it buys him a draw step, right? The problem is he would need to draw. He would need to already have either the other Cryptic Command or the creature in hand, and he doesn't.
Right.
Take a look at our feature match area too. You saw Kenji Egashira in the back tables. He's X1 and 1.
He's having a
His
great
opponent
run.
also X1 and 1. So that part kind of worked out nicely.
See, here is that Snapcaster Mage. And I think we're going to see him pick Cryptic Command. The more you can do with your mana, usually the better, and Cryptic Command is certainly the most powerful card in this graveyard.
He made a mana.
Right, so he went ahead and
Just being
equipped
efficient there
his
for
mana.
Evan. Yeah, he's just going to go ahead and make sure he gets it equipped, though. It's not going to actually do it this turn. I think Paul drew Grim Lavamancer, which earlier in the game
Would have been amazing.
Amazing, but it looks like
So he does have the option of casting a Splinter Twin on his Snapcaster Mage.
Yes, it was just why he's looking at his graveyard.
Right. But it doesn't look like he has anything in there that's going to deal with that Ornithopter. So he has to deal with the Ornithopter and the Inkmoth Nexus. So I think we're going to see Paul pretty quickly move to game 2 here. Although, I guess his out here, he could conceivably Splinter Twin up a Snapcaster, tap it, target the Flame Slash.
No, he doesn't have enough red.
Oh, yeah.
He's on only 2 red sources. He has to use both for the twin.
Oh, no. So he can target Serum Visions and pay a mana and draw, what, 1 blue mana off the Serum Visions? I don't know what he could draw there.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like it's quite going to cut it.
He's not running Vapor Snag.
Right. Paul also trying to imagine what he could find, and comes to the same conclusion we did.
Conclusion we did, that's right. So Evan Powers defeats Paul Cheon in this first game.
And the game, it looked like Paul, had a pretty good chance of winning there when he...
It did.
He played that turn 3 Deceiver Exarch, and Evan had his Singleton Galvanic Blast to kill it.
Yeah.
Paul never found another one.
No.
You got to think if he had, it probably would have been able to buy him a turn to cast it.
So here's Kenji Agashira on the left versus Max Walsh. Again, both players... I think both players are 9-1 and 1 here. You can double check that, but...
Max certainly not 9-1 because there's another round there that you would need a...
Yeah, he can't be 9-1.
Result for. Interesting, Max looking like he is down a land here somehow.
Could just be fetching.
Oh, right, he's just fetching and it's about to be his turn, so Kenji on the play.
Kenji already with a scary Pestermite there, but this is interesting here, GCB. Max Walsh is on Grixis Delver.
Yeah.
Huh?
I saw Grixis Delver play yesterday against in one of the tables that wasn't on the feature match against Dan Hansen, sort of seeing if Dan and his dredge deck would make day 2. And he was playing cards like Deprive.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember Deprive. I like Deprive.
Yeah, it's a counterspell, but I have to bounce a land. So obviously this deck full of really cheap spells, he's not worried about getting a whole lot of mana in play. Also taking advantage of a couple of the new cards, or just the Tassiger. It's playing Tassiger, which of course you can play with very little mana since you get cards in your graveyard. You can see Ataxian Probe over there.
Here's Terminate for Max Walsh, targeting the Pestermite, but that's a nice target for Spell Snare.
Sure is.
Kenji's going to be happy to use that up. Whenever you're playing Spell Snare, if they present a target, you're usually pretty happy about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there are those games where they never do.
And you're always in the situation where you've spent less mana than they have on your spell too, which is great.
Indeed, by default.
Yeah, unless there's some very strange thing and play like a Vault Scourge sometimes.
Yeah, that's the guy.
There's also...
even then you're even now.
If they're playing a creature and the legend is in play, that makes everything cost 1 more if it's a non-creature.
Okay, we're
conceivably a tie. Yeah. Of course, you would have just spell snared that creature since.
True.
Yeah, but it looks like I think Max's deck is going to present a lot of targets for a spell snare. There's also Young Pyromancer.
Oh, right.
In there, yeah. Look at that list. There it is. Yeah, another interesting card Max is running. He's got 3 Murderous Cut in his deck.
Wow. So everything cheap, either off of Delve or just being cheap naturally.
Yeah, he's using 4 Thought Scour to make sure he has a nice full graveyard for that. Interesting deck. See, it's going to be a tough one for Splinter Twin. His whole deck is just cheap threats, Max Walsh's, and removal spells that can kill Kenji's creatures. He's got it looks like a Slaughter Pact in his hand.
Looks like Kenji's going to go in response to your Snapcaster. I will play my own Snapcaster and Spell Snare yours. So
yet another Spell Snare target.
Yeah.
Looking pretty good.
Snapcaster, one of the best Spell Snare targets. Snapcaster and Goyf are kind of the ones that come to mind.
And here we're going to see a Murderous Cut. Max making sure that Kenji has no opening to put a twin on that Pestermite.
That's right.
Main phase is a Murderous Cut.
I like that play.
Just tapped out, absolutely.
Yeah, that seems really smart from Max.
See, how good is Murderous Cut? 1 mana, destroy target creature. You got a full graveyard.
At instant speed, I'm on board for that one. I am interested. Now remember, this is a sideboarded game. We're in game 2. Max Walsh had already won game 1 from Kenji.
And here, Kenji looking, his hand
does not look great here.
Oh, he does have Threads of Disloyalty, which is pretty good.
It is quite good, and he does have a threat. Max is down to 11.
Yeah, but Max still looking pretty in control of the game. You see Kenji keep both cards on top. That's a good sign for him off that Serum Visions, although he did draw a land and he has another one in his hand. So Max draws Delver. That's going to be a nice little Threads of Disloyalty target.
Wow, Max is going to fall down to 9 here. That's a whole turn.
It certainly is.
At some point, Max is going to have to use actual removal on that Snapcaster, it seems.
But you know, his deck, since he seems to have so few lands, and we'll get a count on that, but you know, you can afford a few extra spells to trade for people's 2/1s.
This is where he wants to see a young Pyromancer.
Yeah.
Makes Snapcaster Mage look silly.
Exactly. It's an 18 land deck.
Wow.
18 land, 4 Serum Visions, 4 Gataxian Probe, 4 Thought Scour, and 1 Sleight of Hand.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's got 13
So how many
cycling
action
cards.
spells does that leave? There are not many.
Yeah, the action spells is just, he's got Snapcasters, Delvers, Pyromancers, Tassigers, and then he's got Deprives, Terminates, and Murderous Cuts, and some Electrolyzes and Lightning Bolts. So that's creature removal, some counters, some burn, and some efficient creatures.
You know, this deck actually seems quite sweet.
It does. It seems like it matches up really well against the other things that are happening in the format. So,
Kenji, the card that he put on top of Serum Visions was Cryptic.
that's a nice one to get.
We'll go back to our main match here. We'll keep an eye on this match for you guys and bring you any updates that happen. But
looks like they're
underway
for
here.
a while.
And they might be grinding. This one could be over quickly. You know, sometimes these Affinity decks just have that draw.
Sometimes these Splinter Twin decks just have that draw too.
Totally. and I don't want to miss anything here. So let's jump back. Paul Cheon versus Evan Powers. Evan won game 1. Seemed close. I mean, Paul resolved Cryptic Command a couple of times. Usually it's about all she wrote, but not this time.
Couldn't find a creature to put his Splinter Twin on. And
nice start here, though, for Chion.
Yeah.
Nothing like a little Grim Lavamancer against this small creature deck to really ruin their day.
Yeah, and Evan, you know, just playing his Relief on turn 1, so Chion happy to see that. Only, 2 cards coming out of his hand in the first turn.
Wow, and we talked about it yesterday a bit, but you'll see that Affinity is supposed to, air quotes, supposed to win game 1 because everybody has some type of hate for it in game 2. And even though Paul Cheon doesn't have access to like Stony Silence, I've already seen in his hand, he's got Grim Lavamancer down, he's got Electrolyze in his hand, and I saw an Engineered Explosives somewhere in the mix from that Serum Visions too.
Yep.
So we're talking about like hate cards everywhere here already for Paul.
It looked like Paul saw maybe a removal spell and an Engineered Explosives off that. I couldn't quite see. Maybe it was another Splinter Twin. He put one on bottom. He doesn't have a third land, so it's an awkward situation where he says, these are all spells that I want, but I definitely need to be making my land drops. He does keep one of them on top, probably the Engineered Explosives.
Yeah, putting Evan in just a horrible position. Paul's got Lightning Bolt in hand and active Grim Lavamancer.
And you see Evan here play a Signal Pest and immediately tap it. So he's putting a lot of things that cost exactly 1 into play so far. And there's another one. That's going to make that Engineered Explosives look really good if he has one.
And he's going to immediately kill the Signal Pest.
And the card he kept was Ancient Grudge. So Engineered Explosives went to the bottom.
What is going on here?
Paul could not pass up an Ancient Grudge, which seems reasonable, but you see him miss his land drop. This could be the awkward thing for Paul. He's got an Electrolyze in his hand.
Yes.
This is a great card. He's got a Spell Snare. He's got all sorts of action, of course, because he doesn't have any land.
Right.
So.
But all of his spells are cheap and very effective against Evan's deck here. I got to say, based on the hand from Chion, he looks to be in good shape, especially because Evan hasn't been able to mount much pressure at all here. All he came up with was a Signal Pest. Here's another one. And there's a Vault Scourge. So just not a lot of action here. And I think the Vault Scourge might get countered here. Paul's got Spell Snare. Now, if you've played this matchup, and I have, Vault Scourge is not your ideal target for Spell Snare.
Absolutely
You've got
not.
3 fantastic targets, but Paul Cheon is stuck on mana here, and I don't think he can afford to just not cast his mana, but you've got Steel Overseer, Cranial Plating, and Arcbound Ravager that you really want to hit with Spell Snare.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Although
if you
he
can
hasn't,
keep him
he
on
hasn't seen an
nothing,
Overseer
it's
yet.
not bad either. Yeah, he hasn't seen one.
And the other thing here is that Evan only has 1 land, so that creature is a mana with those Springleaf Drums.
Yes.
And Paul, knowing he had the Bolt as well in his hand, able to knock out both the creatures, keeping Evan on just 1 mana.
Right, and what he's also done here, GCB, is filled up his yard with 2 more cards so
Exactly.
that his Grim Lavamancer has food for later. So
And he drew his 3rd land.
played it untapped,
Yeah, that's it. That's
and
that's
now
the big
he's just
news.
going to dare Evan to activate that Blinkmoth Nexus.
Right. I mean,
Welding Jar, I guess, can help a little.
Paul's hand, it looks like he has the combo and just needs 1 more land. That blue card in his hand, is that a Exarch?
I'm not sure. I know he does have the twin. I did see that.
Yep. Evan,
Wow.
with a
Paul has
frustrating
been able to
Affinity draw.
control this board in such a dominant way that he can actually just take out Welding Jar if he wants.
Yeah, exactly.
He's
Say, I
passed
want to make
the
sure.
turn back.
So, Paul,
Paul says, sure, this works for me. So I'm assuming, of course, now that he doesn't have the
yeah, I don't think that he has it, or he might be
combo
thinking
piece. He could be thinking,
Dismember is the card that
Dismember,
Evan
there it
does have a
is.
Dismember in his deck.
meanwhile, Lavamancer beatdown. Good old-fashioned way here.
Well, Evan's
Another
not
land
presenting
off
any
the top
targets.
for Chion. He's deciding if he wants to play a tapped or untapped, and it was a nice one too.
Yeah,
It's a stomping ground. That's going to unlock the other half of his
Ancient Grudge,
grudge.
so it
This
looks-
draw has been very good for Paul Cheon.
It has.
Even though he's a little tight on mana, he could
The
cast
blue card in
enough
his hand is
spells.
Cryptic Command, it looks like. So if he draws an island here, then that'll turn that on and he'll look even better. Although Evan's hand's still full. If Evan hits some mana and can start to just deploy the cards in his hand, he could overwhelm Paul pretty quick.
Did you say island?
Island would be good.
Right on time.
Yeah. What would be even better, though, a Splinter Twin. A target.
A target for Splinter Twin, yeah.
A Deceiver Exarch or a Pesterman.
And right now, Evan has passed the turn now 3 consecutive turns with Chion loading up his grip, dealing a little damage, draws an
There's an
Engineered
Engineered
Explosives.
Explosives, which
You know, do you fire that off here? It would kill your Lavamancer.
Right.
How important are these Springleaf Drums at this point?
I mean,
They are.
Evan needs mana, and they are important, but I think that since the Lavamancer can keep the creatures under control, you just say, well, we'll play that game. And of course, Engineered Explosives on 2 takes out all those really powerful cards you were talking about earlier. So it's a good backup plan. But I think Paul is saying right now, the Engineered Explosives is the last card he needs to play.
Right.
Here we see a Ravager from Evan. Paul considering whether this is a good cryptic target, or whether he wants to Ancient Grudge it. He decides to let it resolve. I think we're going to see that Welding Jar get eaten up pretty quick here. Ooh,
Thoughtseize you. That's an interesting one.
That is interesting. Now, Paul can actually respond by doing something like Cryptic Command, bounce that Ravager,
Yeah.
or just Cryptic Command, draw a card, you know? Evan's not presenting any threats. He's already played his land for the turn. Unless he has a Mox, he can't really do anything else. So yeah, it's going to be dismiss, essentially.
So he's going to counter the Thoughtseize, draw a card.
He draws another Splinter Twin, not what he was hoping for. And
There's a lightning bolt. Yeah, it's funny. It's just like even if these aren't the kill conditions immediately, you just feel like the noose is tightening steadily here on Evan. It's all lightning bolts and removal spells anyway. And now he's going to just force the issue here.
Yeah, he's going to go ahead and...
Wow, Evan just doesn't... he can regenerate, but he's just going to get to bolt it in response or even do whatever he wants.
Well, he's got the Ancient Grudge.
He's got the Grudge, he's got a bolt, like he can do what he wants here, and Evan's out of mana. And he also is out of creatures. He can't even put the Ravager and kind of make one big play with it.
If he did have 1 mana, he could activate that Nexus, but of course he's been tight on mana all game.
Yeah,
so.
and also he would get destroyed if he did that in this scenario. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I mean, he's in a desperate way here, though. He might have wanted to do that anyway had it been an option.
So So interesting, is Paul going to wait here for that Welling Jar to resolve? He's not, he's going to electrolyze. So Evan can just sacrifice Ravager to deny the card draw here.
Yeah, but if Paul targeted Evan with one of them, he'll get the card draw. He doesn't. So Ravager down. And there's a cranial plating. It's one of the saddest cranial platings I think I've ever seen. No creatures.
Evan, though, he's got a handful of cards.
He has been stuck on mana for the duration here. He finally has 2.
And every creature that resolves produces another one with that Spring Leaf drop. I would not be surprised to see him just play Spellskite here.
Spellskite, make a mana maybe.
Evan down to 13 from those Grim Lavamancer beats.
No longer though. Here's Spellskite to save the day. Does he have a 1-drop as
Also,
well?
he paid
No.
2 for a Vault Scourge and a couple other things. But
another land off the top here for Cheon. Still has a grip full of gasoline now.
this might be the moment for Engineered Explosives to get rid of that Spellskite to make sure he can keep targeting things. Spellskite certainly shuts down.
I don't know, he just feels like he's got the grudge too. Like half a grudge is fine.
Yeah.
He might even want to entice Evan to feel like, okay, now the way is safe. I'm going to start deploying a whole bunch of threats.
Right.
Only to find out
plating.
after.
So it looks like Evan's going to maybe use a Galvanic Blast to kill that Lavamancer. It's the card in front of his hand. Nope, he's going to make an Etch Champion. Or a Master of Ethereum.
Okay.
I haven't seen that card yet.
Not a bad one. This ancient grudge is going to get put to good use here.
You want to spend 3 mana on a spell? That's okay with me.
Yeah, it's his whole turn. All this
Basically,
mana untapped.
You know, Paul just working for draw phases. As soon as he can find a twin.
Yeah, he's trading in cards for draw phases, and he's got a lot of cards. And like you said, he's got that twin up as well. So
he's got 2 of them. He's got, you know, a handful of red cards right now, though. So he can't defend it if.
Yeah, I like this play. It gives Evan the option here, but he's going to have to tap his Master of Ethereum if he wants to make blue mana for the Spellskite to save it. Also, the fact that it happens to be Ancient Grudge, Evan has to see the writing on the wall here and know that his Master of Ethereum
not long for this world
could die.
So the question is it worth it for Evan to pay 2 life to make Paul think about it again, or yeah, he will. He'll lose the Spellskite instead.
Wow. All right. Paul's got to be happy with this result.
Yep. I got 2 free damage here, making you pay 2 life. Paul searches up a land. Evan sits there tensely, wondering if he's about to get comboed out, but the land comes into play tapped.
Right. Paul feels like he's been in the driver's seat for quite a while here.
Just the one missing piece.
Yep.
And Paul's really effectively down to 2 cards here.
And Paul's getting aggro.
Yeah. Evan
decided to leave the Grim Lavamancer in play. He could have played, not last turn, he could have played
Galvanic Blast
on it, but decided not to.
Galvanic Blast, great defense against the combo, so I think that's what it's doing there.
Glimmer Void, and here is a cranial plating. Paul Chion at a cushy 16 life. No creature this turn to attach it to. He's got a Blink Moth down there, but that's tapped. And Bolt you. So we see the game plan, and I think we're going to see Snapcaster Bolt here as well.
I think so. Evan can then play defense with his Galvanic Blast, but it's still going to get him pretty low. Oh, actually, with the Lavamancer activation, all Paul has to do then is get another creature into the graveyard. So he attacks with the Snapcaster. Evan kills the Snapcaster with a Galvanic Blast. That's the second card for the Lavamancer to activate.
This one could be over quickly.
Looks like Paul's got this one wrapped up. And indeed, Evan goes into defense mode, maybe a little too late. see Evan take
Bang,
8 from the classic
bang, bang.
bolt you, snap, the bolt you, attack you with the snap.
Yep. I see our back match has evacuated over there. Kenji did not win.
So the Grixis Delver.
Grixis
That's
Delver wins
interesting.
again.
I'd like to get a closer
Another
look
one
at that
I need
deck.
to build on Magic Online,
Yeah,
apparently.
absolutely. That's a really, really fun list. You know, you can imagine opening hands where it's just a couple of lands and all cycling cards, and you don't even know what you have, except a full graveyard.
I remember Zach Hill had a build of that style of deck for Modern, but that was when Deathray Shaman was legal. It's a little different.
Right. Yeah.
You had all the Grim Lavamancers you wanted.
Yeah, that's Deathray Shaman. Great way to take advantage of that full graveyard.
Right.
Certainly.
And as we saw, you know, even just jumping over to that match,
You can fill up the
you can
graveyard
fill up your
fast.
graveyard super fast with that deck.
No, I mean, how often do you get to see a deck that plays 18 lands and 6, 5, and 6 drops in the list,
Yeah.
you know? With Murderous Cut and Tassier.
I love that. Yeah, Max Walsh.
Taking advantage of the delve mechanic. Cool.
Improving to X1 and 1. Kenji drops to X2-1, which is precarious.
Curious, but still in contention for the top 8. We'll see. You know, these Splinter Twin Affinity matches, they take a while. You would think these two decks, both of which are capable of killing so fast.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see how intricate it is and how there's not a lot of turns, but the turns don't move very fast.
Now, this is a big game here for both of these players.
It certainly is.
They really cannot afford to give up a loss at this point in the tournament and still have a great shot at making top 8. So you got to think it favors Cheon here. You know, after seeing the way his deck transformed. Now, to be fair, it did look like he drew a lot of sideboard cards there.
He drew a lot of sideboard cards, and
But
Evan had
that's
a
kind of
pretty
what his
awkward
deck
draw.
can do. And he did have an awkward draw, but it was made awkward, right? I mean, Cheon killed. Remember how many creatures Cheon killed in the early stages? And there was those 2 Springleaf drums with nobody to beat on them.
Exactly.
Just sitting there.
Unplayed
And
drums. The other key point, though, here,
good thing.
Affinity's on the play, and that's a big, big deal.
Huge.
Splinter
Good
Twin
point.
has a lot of cheap cards, but ooh, it looks like Paul is on a 1-lander there. So we'll see first if Affinity is going to keep. Evan,
Is it a 1-lander with a Serum Visions?
you see Evan draw 5 cards, and he's going to mulligan.
Paul's got 2 Ancient Grudge, 1 land Serum Visions, and he's going to keep it, I think.
He
I
is
think
gonna
that
keep.
seems like a keep, right?
I think it's a keep. You know, this is one of those funny situations where you almost wonder if he had a breeding pool in his deck, if he would search that up, as opposed to searching up the steam vents, because green is so much
Stomping
harder
Ground?
to find. But then he can't
Go
cast
all
his
the
Serum
way?
Visions.
Oh, of course. We've gone too deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if he has one. Some of these decks do run 1 Stomping Ground. I think he does.
He has a Stomping Ground, but I don't think he has a breeding pool.
Doesn't have the breeding pool. Interesting.
Yeah. Only the 1 land. You know, you search that up, and then you can play both halves of the Ancient Grudge with just a Stomping Ground.
Right.
The other idea, if you play the breeding pool instead, that gives you the ability to search up your green mana and have it be not the red mana, so you can play both halves of the Ancient Grudge at the same time.
A little bit down the line.
Yep.
So Cheon's hoping for a lot of things right now. First, he's hoping for Evan to mulligan to 3, and he's also hoping that he sees some lands off the top of his deck. Now, he's going to get to see quite a few cards. He gets a draw step, then he gets the draw that he gets from Serum Vision. So that's 2 cards he's getting next turn. And then he gets his Scry 2 as well. So he's going to be going pretty deep here to try to find lands. He's very likely to find them.
And of course, if he scries everything at the bottom, he has the next draw phase as well before he even needs a second land. So
exactly.
It's pretty
All
good.
right, so how quick of a start do we get here from Evan? Pretty good.
Pretty good. Deploys half of his hand. I didn't see what Chion drew there, but you see him immediately go. And he is going to get a Steam Vents
here, I think. This is going to open up any lightning bolts or anything down the line as well. Of course, electrolyze those type of cards. He really does need to have these. And so he's going to have to settle for his Ancient Grudges being shatters until he can find a green mana source. But That is something he is very willing to settle for here. Now, this is a big one here, though.
So Serum Visions, and he picks up.
What does he draw?
A land.
He drew a land right off the top.
So there's the steam vents. So he's looking pretty good. And a Deceiver Exarch, he hasn't had trouble finding those, but he has one in his hand already. Engineered Explosive's also quite good, but I think he probably just wants to make sure he gets enough land, and you're going to see these go to the bottom.
Put them both on the bottom. Yeah, I think you're right, GCV. So down they go.
So far, so good for
All right.
Paul.
Yeah, this is what Paul wanted. He's not under extreme pressure, but this turn is huge for Evan.
Now, Evan, you saw Thoughtseize in his hand.
Okay, but he has no colored mana and no
like
second land, so this is great news for Paul Cheon's fans, and Evan is up against it really quickly here. That 2-drop slot is so massive for this deck, and he's found it.
He did find a land.
So what is he going to add to the board?
Well, he can't cast the Thoughtseize. It looks like he might have a Steel Overseer there.
Respectfully says go to attacks.
Yeah. Paul looking at that Electrolyze in his hand and the Nexus over on the other side, and wondering if he can get a 2-for-1 there at some point.
There it is, Steel Overseer. That'll be a nice target for an Ancient Grudge.
Yeah, he has the option of...
Wow, it doesn't use it.
So if he had the 3rd land, so he knows he can Electrolyze here. And he's going to get...
1, 2, goodness sakes.
You know, you thought Ancient Grudge was good. How about kill 2 of your artifacts and draw a card?
That, kiddos, is what we call a 3-for-1, and you don't see those very often in Magic, and that's why Electrolyze has stood the test of time here, and the awkwardest Spellskite.
Yeah, shows up late to the game.
Doesn't work well against Electrolyze anyway.
Paul has the combo.
He just drew the Stomping Ground. Oh, and the combo?
He has the combo. He has 2 Ancient Grudges and Stomping Ground. I would be surprised to see him lose this game. Of course, he has to deal with that Spellskite before he can combo off.
That's correct. So he's just going to take a turn here. And another land off the top for Evan, so things have gone fairly well for him, or so he thinks.
He drew a black land. He can cast his Thoughtseize now. So he's going to see his fate.
He is going to cry.
It looks like, though...
Don't do it, man. You don't want to look at this.
How many Splinter Twins are over there? There's 2 Splinter Twins.
Who cares?
1
look
Deceiver
at this.
Exarch.
Oh my god.
2 Deceiver Exarchs, 2 Twins, 2 Ancient Grudges in a land.
Yeah.
You might see Evan pack them up right here.
Yeah, he might just be like, well...
If he could write down the hand he did not want Paul to have when resolving that Thoughtseize, I think that's the hand he would have written down.
This is just disgusting.
So I think he probably has to go for take Deceiver Exarch, and then bluff having a removal spell for the other Deceiver Exarch since Paul can't defend it.
And he has 2 colorless mana.
Well, there's a Dismember.
That's his...
He actually does have a Dismember in his list.
Okay, I'm in on this plan. In the meantime, Paul does have to do a little work here. He's going to have to kill the Spellskite before he considers going off.
Top of land, Ancient Grudge.
Yeah. So you can certainly play the Exarch.
I think Evan is now just holding the hand like, man, I wish I was holding this against an Affinity player.
Yeah.
This feels a lot better than the cards I have.
Yeah. He can play both the Exarch and Ancient Grudge this turn too, of course, because the Exarch produces a mana if it untaps one of his lands. So
sure.
Cheon, you know, if Evan taps his last couple lands and leaves it open, or if Cheon gets the read, so he goes for the Splinter Twin here.
That's interesting.
That makes sense, you know, because it's a resource that there's less of in the Splinter Twin deck. If he can
find another,
he does have a Dismember, and so Paul will see this play. He'll untap his own land. He'll use the Ancient Grudge on the Spellskite, and now, okay.
Oh, and Evan doesn't even make him do it. I would have definitely put him to the test.
I would have bluffed the Dismember there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's going to do it, though. Paul Cheon doesn't have to do the sweat. He doesn't have to think about it. He's just like, pick up the victory
so
here.
Nice of Evan.
That was charitable.
I mean, Evan's looking at that going, I would have to have him play around, you know, get him to play around a card I don't have.
I can't
and then
blame
work
Evan.
through 2 Ancient Grudges.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, come on, we're talking about 10 seconds. You just say go.
I would have definitely made him sweat.
Yeah, me too. just for value, even if you know you're going to lose.
Yeah.
All right, so here's our King of the Hill Turbo Edition. So Robbie Schmidt has just been running the show over here on the King of the Hill table with his Affinity list.
That's why they call it King of the Hill.
Koch has come all the way over from Germany. He's got a few friends with him as well.
Not a great start for the Affinity deck, and it is a great start for Florian Koch. He's got turn 1 Hierarch, turn 2 Inquisition. I can take away your most dangerous card.
You know his name means cook.
cook.
That's what it means.
He's cooking up quite a game here. He's got turn 1 Hierarchy into turn 2 Tarmogoyf Inquisition. I see him take that scary Etch Champion.
Yeah, that thing can blank a Tarmogoyf forever and then eventually kill you.
Yeah, pick up that plating that's sitting there. Although, plating a card that Abzan can actually deal with main deck, it has the
Abrupt Decay.
Abrupt Decay. So.
Ooh, hello. Tassiger the Golden Fang.
Old friend Tassiger.
The Banana Man has arrived. Left with no graveyard whatsoever.
Right.
But a 4/5 is not a bad thing.
And he can fill up the graveyard on his own if he wants.
Ooh, Lingering Souls. That's a very good one against Robbie Schmidt here.
Yep.
That is going to buy Florian a lot of time here. In fact, he can even flash it back this turn.
The card Robbie Schmidt needs to win this game is another Etch Champion. And you can see in his hand he has an Ensoul Artifact and a Galvanic Blast. Ensoul Artifact, not quite going to cut it. He's going to have to go on defense with that, it looks like.
That's cute.
Because he can't crack through all those spirits in time to outrace a Tarmogoyf and a Tassiger.
Now, this is pretty sweet, though, for Robbie. He's put it on Darksteel Citadel, which is indestructible,
Yep.
and a 5/5. So it's kind of the perfect size here, assuming the Goyf is sitting at 4/5.
Unfortunately, it is not actually Abrupt Decay proof because you can just Abrupt Decay the Ensoul Artifact. So the 5/5, it looks pretty invulnerable, but isn't quite against this deck. Abrupt Decay,
Good point.
and a spectacular card. One of the reasons that this Abzan deck is so good is it can play a card like this that just is an answer to so many things.
Speaking of spectacular cards, how about Gavany Township?
Well, when you have 7 creatures in play, I'd say Gavany Township's pretty freaking good.
Yeah, I'm on board with that assessment. There is a Ravager, but the power was just too much on Florian's side, and he's able to take game 1 from Robbie Schmidt.
Yeah.
Florian looking to travel basically an ocean and a continent to try to take this King of the Hill from Robbie, and he's well on his way here.
Absolutely.
All right, so we'll just get right down to the meat of the action here. I love that. That's my favorite part about Turbo Magic.
It's really nice for Florian to get that first game and then be able to bring in his hate cards. Hopefully let them carry him for a game.
Yeah.
Robbie now on the play.
Are we going to see a Stony Silence turn 2 here? Is that possible? It is possible. Instead, though, it's going to be a Tarmogoyf and a Dismember to kill the Steel Overseer. A replacement Steel Overseer, though, hits the table.
Yeah, Dismember, an interesting card to
Scourge.
bring in, but you do want cheap effects that impact the board, and those chunks of life, 4 damage is a lot, but Affinity deals damage to you 10 at a time. So
Truth.
You're perfectly happy to pay 4 if it means you can have a 1-mana removal spell.
Yeah, it's often 2 attacks they will just have killed you with once they get plating going.
Exactly.
Or this card, Hearthbound Ravager.
This game looking much better for Robbie Schmidt.
It certainly is. I'm waiting for Florian to play some devastating sideboard card, but we haven't seen it.
Could be
Creeping Corrosion is one that he can have as well.
Even the Lingering Souls would be pretty helpful right now, buy him some time against this massive board. So here comes a big Tarmogoyf. Robbie says, okay, you got me. Let's race. I've got Vault Scourges and
Yeah.
I'm the aggro deck. And we do see Lingering Souls, so shields up. Time to block.
Yeah, Robbie just doesn't have a way to get around these Lingering Souls outside of the Etch Champion, so he just has to work through them. He can get through them. He can just bang into them over and over again.
But he only has one creature that can really generate enough toughness to survive that combat, and that's the Ravager. Now, he can stick those counters on something else, but then it leaves him vulnerable to, a removal spell. So here he is. He has to attack the Ravager, and
It's chump block here, right?
yeah, Florian chumps and forces the sacrifice of 1 artifact from Robbie. So now that's a 2/2 Ravager.
So he's working his way through, but meanwhile, Tarmogoyf gets to do its job.
And it looks like there's a Siege Rhino in Florian's hand. So if he has nothing else, he will have a big turn. And there's a chump block for Robbie. He sacrifices the chump blocker to Ravager. Works great against a Tarmogoyf because you get the chump in. Doesn't work so good against Siege Rhino.
No.
That creature disappears. Full trample goes through.
Really good against decks like what Robbie's playing, these little creature decks. Now, that Ravager is a 3/3 and can get big enough to eat a Siege Rhino, or so can the Vault Scourge, but not a great spot here for Robbie Schmidt. Though I have seen Affinity win from spots like this before, especially these got 2 Inkmoth Nexus down there as well.
Yep.
So something like a Cranial Plating can completely shift things around, but those Lingering Souls tokens are really the difference makers here.
Yeah, buying so much time for
Yeah,
Florian.
so
And
much
meanwhile,
time.
he attacks on the ground. Sort of interesting that one of the classic strategies in Magic is defend on the ground, attack in the air. Well, he's doing the opposite.
He is.
He's blocking in the air, attacking on the ground.
That's good.
Power of the Rhino. And
One
then it
really
comes
cool
in.
thing about the Rhino too is that if Robbie makes a big play, dumps a bunch of counters, say onto a Vault Scourge, and Florian goes for a removal spell, and Robbie then would normally move the counters over to something else, but he would actually take the full brunt of the Rhino thanks to Trample here too.
Right.
And it looks like Robbie has double blocked with a Vault Scourge and one of the Ink Moth Nexus.
And now you
And
see
he's
that.
going to Blink Moth Pump.
Right.
So this is a total of 3.
Right. The 2 of it is infect damage, so it's going to
Yeah.
shrink the Rhino a little bit.
I think Florian's okay with that.
I think so too. But I think that's the life total on Robbie's side is he had to do exactly that much blocking, and he might as well have some of it be infect. So here you see him, looks like a kind of a desperation attack.
Yeah, this does feel like that.
I think if Florian blocks, just blocks everything, it should be enough.
So this is the mode of the game now where Florian is just figuring out how to make sure that he's not missing something, because of course the Ravager just throw a huge monkey wrench in the business here.
And there's a Vault Scourge out there too, so it looks like what Robbie might also be doing is saying, well, I'm going to end up pumping a lot of stuff onto the Vault Scourge. I'll just see how you block first. There's a Zealous Persecution, and it looks like Florian got that. He found the correct blocks, or no, they're sideboarding.
There was a match.
Oh, they were de-sideboarding.
They were de-sideboarding. All right, so Florian Koch actually does take down the match